Hello there. This is the Tuesday meeting of the Lane County Board of Commissioners, Tuesday, and we are in May 17.
May 20th.
May 21. The May 17 is Norwegian Independence Day. It was on my mind last week. So I'll just go briefly to our adjustments to the agenda. We're going to, unless Mr. Mokraisi can suggest a different path, we're going to jump right into our Collard Lake Road matter, then our Lane County Environmental Impacts and Best Management Practices matter, and then all other matters before we go to our executive session. Is that a good plan so far?
Sounds great.
Okay, great. All right, so let's call up our friends from, is Ms. Kepler here, or are you the?
I'm the sole representative.
All right, you're the sole representative, so I'll just read it in. Order, or public item 12 on our agenda, 12A. And we have order 19-05-21-08 in the matter of the legal status of Collard Lake Road, roads in the Collard Lake Road system, and emergency repair of Collard Lake Road. One of the folks who signed up for public comment, or I guess both Skip and Camille Thompson were not called on when they are, or they were called on later, but they did present our public comment. I just want to let you know I did distribute that out to all the commissioners, Mr. Mokraisi and Mr. Mr. Hurley, Lane County Public Works Director. And also we got an email, or we got testimony this morning in our public comment from Marilyn Adkins, and her paper wasn't distributed, so she gave it to me, and I've now distributed that to all the commissioners as well. So without further ado, I'm going to call on Mr. Dan Hurley. He's our Lane County Public Works Director, and has prepared quite a bit of material for us. We've had work sessions and public comment. And so today, Mr. Hurley, go ahead and make your presentation.
All right, thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Commissioners. So this is the third time we've spoken about Collard Lake Road with this board. The significant issue at hand is there are two active fill failures on that road that need significant attention. They're creating a public hazard. We've discussed the issue around local access roads. So local access roads are public roads that do not receive public funding for various reasons. And this one has a long history that goes back, at least to 1976. We've been discussing this issue with the board. There was some considerable conversation and confusion about the legal status of this road. Our county counsel, Mr. Dingle, has looked into it extensively and has prepared a board order for you that documents that lengthy history. I think it has a record number of whereases going on for about 3 pages. But I think it's important to include all that information in the board order if you take action on it, to document that history, that indeed Collard Lake Road is not a county road. It does not receive public funding. It is a local access road. Whether or not the board considers taking the road as a public road in the future, that's intended to be a future conversation. We will be returning on June 18th with an update on where we're at with inventorying our local access roads, planning to complete that hopefully by August, so that you can have a full listing of our local access roads, and by priority and with different classifications of the status of the road, what it serves, how many lots, if there are schools, the length of the road and whatnot. So I would urge the board to hold off on that piece of the conversation until we can return with more information. So today, what I'm requesting of the board is authorization to use road funds, which is required by state statute to have your authorization to spend on a local access road. We're requesting $75,000, which would be taken out of the road fund contingency. It's estimated that the cost of the repair is about $68,000, but we're requesting a little bit more just to have a little wiggle room in case the costs exceed the initial estimates. In addition to that, in the board order, we are requesting that the board clarify limited maintenance. An earlier board back in the 90s had authorized limited maintenance on Collard Lake Road, but we hadn't specified what that means, so there's some language in the board order around what limited maintenance would be. And the third thing in there is to authorize staff to pursue securing right-of-way along Collard Lake Road. Back in the 70s, the board had authorized staff to proceed to acquire right-of-way, and staff was unsuccessful in obtaining one piece of right-of-way. So it's a critical piece if the board later decides to take action to take this road into the county system. So we'd like to start that effort in the case that the board decides to move in that direction. So those are the major pieces of the board order. If you have any questions, I could take those at this time.
Okay, very good. Are there any commissioners that wish to be recognized for either making a motion or asking questions? Commissioner Bozovich.
Thank you. So let me just make sure I understand correctly what we will do if we pass the board order as is. You know, we won't be changing the designation of Collard Lake Road at this time.
Correct.
But we will be authorizing staff to spend money on emergency repairs and also authorizing staff to try and complete the right-of-way acquisitions that were started back in the 70s and stopped. And then you're saying that we will have an opportunity as we come back in our conversation about all LARs to make the change in designation?
That's what I'm recommending, Commissioner, is that we consider that in the context of the other local access roads.
Okay, because one of I was highly considering amending this motion today to actually designate it as a county road for a couple of reasons. One, there is clear history and legislative intent. And I'm sure that two of our commissioners here that served in the legislature understand that phrase, legislative intent. It was the intent of this board to take Collard Lake Road in as a county road. It was a staff failure to follow up on that legislative intent, you know, when they didn't get one little piece of right-of-way to complete that actual transaction. So that there's the limbo we've had since 1976. So that's one of the reasons why I was going. The second reason is I doubt, and what we'll see this when we get our inventory of LARs, this road now, because we've approved subdivisions on it over the years, serves 128 residential lots. If you take the average ADT in the manuals of 9.52, that's over 1,200 trips a day. And there's very few roads that take 1,000 ADT that are not county maintained. And if you look at our description in Chapter 15 under minor collector, it fully fits the description of minor collector. So, you know, for me, I was ready today to say it should be, you know, this is an exception. It doesn't match the rest of the local access roads across the county. I doubt there's another road that serves this many lots that is still a local access road, although I may be surprised. But I was ready to go there. But knowing the desire to try and take that action, not in a vacuum of the other roads, I'm willing to wait and not make that proposal today. But I'll kind of put the board on notice that my intent is to ask the board to designate Collard Lake Road as a county road and begin normal county maintenance of the road. It meets all the criteria. The legislative intent is clear. In fact, we actually obtained right-of-way with the intent of making it a county road. So all those folks that we obtained right-of-way from, we have an implied contract with. So if we choose not to make it a county road, we should be giving back all that right-of-way. You know, so there's either we have the right-of-way and it was a contractual agreement that we were going to make it a county road, or we give the right-of-way back and leave it in LAR. And I don't think that's a right way, a fair decision in that case either. I mean, it is a single access into over 100 plus lots. Asking a neighborhood to maintain that with, you know, going around and collecting money door to door is a bit much. And yes, I know it was under-designed, poorly constructed, and has a lot of problems and will cost the county in the long run a fair amount of money. But I think we kind of assumed a lot of that responsibility when we continued to approve subdivisions, over the years. Since 1976, we've approved subdivisions out there. So knowing that, and knowing that I'll have an opportunity to make the motion to make Collard Lake Road a county road in the future, I'm going to go ahead and move to approve the board order as written under option 1.
Okay. Okay, it's been moved by Commissioner Bozovich and seconded by Commissioner Buck to approve Order 19-02-21-08 as presented. Further discussion? I'll just say I think this is a good way to handle it, to deal with the problems on Collard Lake Road as they currently stand. We did that before back in the 90s, and I thought that was a good temporary fix. As to the future, I think we should have a kind of an array like you're talking about. I'm not sure if you're talking about a chart or kind of a cost-benefit analysis or a lifetime estimate of what this is, so that we can get an idea of the usage of these different roads and where they compare and how much money we think the whole thing's going to cost. Is that what you have in mind for our next?
Our intent, yes.
Okay, very good. But as to this one, I think this is a good move, and I think we ought to move ahead with it. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question, and it's, and I'm supporting this motion, obviously, and the continuation after today of the next step for this motion. But there are a number of places, and Florence in particular, Florence is built on sand dunes, and a lot of our county-maintained roads end with short dead ends at the end of them, half a block, a third of a block, and then they say end county maintenance, and so that last two driveways or so are not in county maintenance. So typically, those are local access roads or local access dead ends is what they are, cul-de-sacs almost. Is there any history of those becoming county roads? And that you don't need to answer that right now. Let's leave that as a hanging question, but I'd like to take a look at that because I've heard from a couple of folks in the area who, particularly after the last inundation of rain that we had, some of the roads are beginning to fail. And they aren't county roads, but they lead into county roads, and they're wondering if there is any recourse for county maintenance to help them fix it. And I've said not at this point in time because they're local access roads, but since we're talking about local access roads today, in particular one that we've been talking about for a long time, Collard Lake, I thought this would be a good opportunity to ask, what about the other local access roads?
So those small segments would be included in the inventory that we're putting together, so for consideration of all of those roads.
That is the perfect answer. Thank you very much.
Okay, anything further? Okay, so we'll go to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye. 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 All those opposed, please say no. The vote is 5-0. All commissioners present and voting yes. The order is adopted. And thank you very much, Mr. Hurley.
Thank you, Commissioners.
We'll look forward to seeing you soon. And when is that next time we're going to be talking in local access roads?
June 18th.
June 18, okay. So everybody out there, mark your calendar for June 18. Okay, next up, we have item 12B. That is our report, Lane County Environmental Impacts and Best Management Practices. And with us to discuss that is Dan Hurley, Lane County Public Works Director, and Michael Johns, General Service Division Manager at the Lane County Public Works Department. And could you also, Mr. Hurley, introduce other people at the table?
Certainly.
I already know this guy, so.
So we have Michael Johns. He is our division manager of our General Services Division in Public Works. That encompasses fleet facilities and animal services. And we also have Jeff Orlandini. He's our division manager at Waste Management Division. And we may also have Mike Penwell joining us to talk about facilities capital projects.
And Mr. Penwell is part of the county administration?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, but you guys are all Public Works. I just wanted to, I already knew that, but I just want to say that for the benefit of the public, and is that we're mainly talking about Public Works at this session. Okay, go ahead. I know the agenda team set this up for a presentation by you guys and then questions by us, leading, I hope, to another work session on what we can do in the climate change, carbon reduction arena. So please proceed.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So today we're planning to update you on the current environmental best management practices that are being employed around Lane County and primarily in public works. It's my understanding that the board will use this as a starting point for future discussions around climate policy. I will say, as an environmental engineer and an environmental studies master's, that's very encouraging. I'm excited to see the board take this on. I think the time for action is long overdue. I would like to remind the board that this fits within the county strategic plan as it exists now. There's a key strategic initiative under Vibrant Communities that reads, pursue programs and practices that reduce impacts on and leverage the natural environment to enhance livability and economic development. I've worked for Lane County for 15 years, and in that time I've seen Lane County largely sit on the sidelines while hundreds, if not thousands, of municipalities have moved forward with sustainability plans and climate action plans. So this is exciting to see. We've had different politics and financial reasons for not doing that, but the time, like I said, is long overdue. That third bullet there, the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions is critical to community health. Obviously, that's vastly understated. Climate change is the biggest threat of our age, and it threatens our health, our economy. It puts us at jeopardy for catastrophic storms, fires, mass extinctions, sea level rise, the list goes on. But the purpose is not to get into the debate over climate change science or policy. Today we're just talking about where we are and where we might be going. So the good thing is that we haven't sat completely idly by. While we haven't as an organization taken a broad stance around this issue, we have in different areas around the county been moving towards adopting best practices. In particular at Fleet, they've been experimenting using alternative lower carbon fuels, and so Michael Johns will talk about that. Michael will talk about fleet and facilities. Jeff will talk about work going on at Waste Management. If Mike joins us, he'll talk about purchasing and capital projects. And then I'll do a wrap up to talk about kind of a summary and recommendations of where you might go as a board with this issue. Michael.
Good afternoon, Board. Before I get started on what fleets and facilities have been doing, I'd just like to build on what Dan said a little bit. First of all, for our greenhouse gas emissions from our internal county operations, is which we're mainly talking about today with the exception of the solid waste program, we're talking about basically 3 buckets where these greenhouse gas emissions come from, and they're about 1/3 each. 1/3 comes from our fleet, 1/3 comes from our facilities, and 1/3 comes from our procured goods and services. Fleet and facilities, I think we have a pretty good handle on. We have a lot of expertise in it. We know the direction we need to move with that. I think procured goods and services is a little bigger one to wrap our arms around them, and it's something we need to spend a little more effort on. The other thing is, as Dan said, it's correct that we don't have a climate action plan right now, but I would say that all the division managers in the county are experts in their field, and they've been implementing the best practices in their particular industries, and all best practices these days can contain greenhouse gas emission reduction strategies. So in fleet, one of the things we're really excited about now is we've reached critical mass, I would like to say, in, next slide there, please, for electric vehicles. We've been waiting a long time to get those in our light duty fleet. We started a couple years ago with some plug-in hybrids that were very expensive. Electric vehicles have their own incremental costs, but the range was always a concern. Now ranges are routinely over 200 miles per charge and often over 250, and that's increasing rapidly. And it makes sense that when we started converting our light duty sedan fleet to electric vehicles. We've purchased some to place in the pool. We've purchased them for waste management. When anyone comes to us asking to replace the sedan, now we have that conversation with them. Does it make sense to put an EV there? And we're finding that the people are open to that. There's still an economic factor. We do get a $2,500 rebate from the state of Oregon, which governments are eligible for, which we'll take advantage of. And there is also the $7,500 federal tax credit, which we're still trying to figure out if we can find a middleman to try to get at least some of that for us. And we think we're going to be successful in that. So that brings them down to a much more manageable price point. We have now we have 5 charging stations. 4 of them are at Fleet, and we've just installed one out at Glenwood for the new EV that's going into waste management there. We've identified a spot here for the PSB where we can put 4 charging stations in, and that's a conversation that we need to have with the Facilities Committee and Mike Penwell and his group about how we're going to roll charging station infrastructure out. Who's going to be in charge of it? Who's going to pay for what? And those are the conversations we have to get that ball rolling. And we'll also look at, as we roll out the electric vehicle fleet, the other facilities in Lane County. When do we want to put charging stations in there? So that's not a great cost, especially if there's not a lot of trenching to be done. And the charging stations themselves only cost a couple $1,000s, but it's still something we have to figure out. I would say the biggest success we've had in our greenhouse gas emissions reduction was our switch when we were one of the first in the state, actually the very first in the state, along with EWEB, City of Eugene, and City of Portland, to use renewable diesel. Renewable diesel, not to be confused with biodiesel, something completely different. It's refined differently. It has some drawbacks to it. Renewable diesel has the same exact standards as petroleum-based diesel. In fact, it performs better than petroleum-based diesel for certain issues. It reduces the greenhouse gas emissions by an astounding almost 2/3. And there's also other pollutant reductions which aren't contributed to greenhouse gases, but are also good to have. We piloted this program in 2015 when a company based in Finland named Neste was bringing up some fuel from California that they had excess of down there, and we loved it. We got a lot of other fleet managers in the state. We had a big program where we would go around and talk about it, and it was really we were really getting people on board. Then, for a number of reasons, Neste had to pull out of the market, and we were at the whim of the renewable diesel market here in the Northwest and the country overall, and it was very difficult to procure renewable diesel at a price point that we could afford. Right now, it's about $1.30 difference for R99 compared to B5, which just isn't economically feasible. Now, we've had talks at the state level with Neste and that I participated in, and they're wanting to return to this market, and they asked me where their price needs to be, and I was reluctant to share that with them, but it's not at $1.30 difference. And they think it can meet what we need, so we're looking forward to them return. Right now, we've been using renewable diesel and blending it down to R20 as opposed to R99 just because of the cost, which still gives us greenhouse gas emission reductions, but not what we would get if we were using R99. We're looking forward to coming back into the market. Next slide. Now, this is a really interesting chart. FY15 and 16 and 16 and 17, you can see on the far right, our metric ton CO2 equivalent emissions were in the 4,200 metric tons per year. That's when we were using the R99 that we were able to get at the time. Then they left the market. We couldn't afford it. 17, 18, we were mostly using B5 again, and you can see where our greenhouse gas emissions rose to. Since then, in this current year, we've been able to get R20, a blend, so we're at least getting some of it in there, and you can see our metric tons is starting to reduce again. So we're looking forward to getting R99 back into the market here at a reasonable price. And this includes gasoline, the unleaded. So the reduction just in diesel fleet itself would be about 2/3. Over on the right, you can see the prices as of April 30th when we put these slides together, and the R99 at $3.36 a gallon is not really feasible to use when we can blend down to R20 for $2.33 a gallon. Now, of course, if I'm directed to get R99 with regards to costs, I'll certainly do it. But right now, it doesn't seem to pencil out for us, but we're looking forward to the market expanding. And one of the big things about the market that's interesting is the Oregon Clean Fuels Program. The credits that go along with that have increased in price rapidly, which is good for us because that puts us on par with California, and that's the big gorilla in the course on the West Coast for fuel. So if our credits are compatible to what California's are, then we're going to be a market that distributors want to get into. Excellent. So hybrid technology we've been using for years and years. Way before I got here, we bought Priuses the very first year they were out. We've been using them. We loved them. They were a good transition. Right now, we feel that in the small light-duty fleet sedans, that the hybrid technology is not really the direction we want to go anymore for two reasons. One, if we wanted to use an internal combustion engine, their mileage has increased so much that they're comparable to hybrids. The other thing is that the EVs now, the range is increasing, the prices are coming down, and why get a vehicle that has two different systems that we have to maintain when we can just get an EV for just a little bit more? And a sidebar is the maintenance costs on a vehicle that's an EV are a fraction of what an internal combustion engine maintenance costs are. There's no fluids and things like that we normally have in a vehicle. Could you define what EV is? Electric vehicle for EV. So we think that for the light-duty fleet, electric vehicles is the direction we want to go in the future. Hybrids may have a place still. There's no economically feasible pickup truck that's electric right now. It's coming, but it's not here yet. Same with SUVs, larger SUVs, and patrol vehicles for the sheriff's office. So we may still pursue hybrid technology in those applications, but in the small sedan fleet, we think we're going to go completely with EVs. Next slide. Now, in facilities, we're doing a lot of things kind of under the radar, not real sexy things to look at as far as LED replacements. We're doing some LED replacements at Health and Human Services. I just found out yesterday that the Lane Event Center is doing a big program that the contractor's so excited about. They want to actually do a study on it so we can use their report to see the cost savings and the energy savings on that. So those are small things that we're just kind of replacing as the programs come up, and they save us a lot in maintenance as well as in money and energy use. Also, the chiller that has been approved for the PSB is a lot more efficient. You can see the 25 times more efficient than the current operation. So that's also a big area for us. So now I'll turn it over to Mr. Orlandini, who, like I said before, most of what we're talking about here today is internal county operations, and Jeff's portion is more impact on the county as a whole.
Good afternoon. So as you can see in the first bullet point, we manage 16 disposal sites, and the main thing here is talking about a lot of our education outreach. So we have a lot of partners like Bring that help us in Oregon Green schools. We work with the help, go into schools and teach them about waste reduction and some of these things that we're talking about. I think why this is noteworthy is it means as we move forward and the county works on more, we have a direct line into a lot of the education, and we can incorporate this into what we're currently teaching and helping people to realize. And we find that when you go into a grade school, that actually can have more of an effect on how adults react and behavior change than if you go to adults and tell them about things like how to recycle correctly and things like that. We have an aspirational goal of 63% of our waste being recovered by 2025. And so while we're very proud of our almost 53% and leading the state right now in waste recovery, that's a big jump in a little over 5 years. And so we have to do a lot to get there. And one of the areas that I'm sure you're all aware of in most communities is in the organics, and that's the food waste, wasted food, and then also with wood products. And those two organic materials are, a little north of 30% of our current waste stream. So food alone would be around 17%. And so having that not go into the waste stream would be the next big lift if we could. And obviously City of Eugene's doing a lot of work around some curbside collection and some other partners with that. So that is guiding our work and our solid waste master plan, which we'll be bringing to you next month, and then going through the process of approving, also has multiple focus areas on not only waste reduction, but carbon footprint reduction and greenhouse gases. Some of the things that we've done, Michael talked about an electric vehicle we're getting next month. We're excited about. We have our big compactor that goes, or our tractor that's in the pit at Glenwood that compacts all that trash and puts it in our trucks for transport. We recently were able to go to a hybrid on that, which is a pretty interesting and exciting innovation for us. We haven't done it at the landfill yet. Those aren't up for replacement, but it's already reduced the fuel input in a big vehicle that we operate every day for most of the day at that site by 50%. We, as most folks know, had a second plastics roundup. We're very excited that those two roundups had over 10 tons of plastics recovered. However, looking at some of the new models that Oregon DEQ is using around assessing items from cradle to grave and looking at carbon footprint, we are really analyzing these events to find out if they are actually a reduction in terms of carbon usage when you look at the number of vehicles driving to Glenwood, waiting in line to get rid of them, the trucks transporting this material up to Portland to then be processed, and whether or not this is actually an event that does save us from the carbon footprint versus making us kind of feel good about getting rid of some of those plastics. And so we'll be coming out with that so that we can really educate the public on events like that and whether or not we're doing the right thing when we look from cradle to grave. And then we are studying our methane capture at Short Mountain. So we're all very happy that 100% of our captured methane at Short Mountain is being turned into electricity by EPUD. They do have capacity to increase that, which is good because we have a landfill that has over 120 years of life left on it. So we know we're going to have more and more methane. So currently everything that we're capturing is being turned into electricity, but we are analyzing that system to find out if it's possible to increase their generation of electricity there. We are also, the last thing I'll mention, just going and looking at sorting lines and thinking about a new transfer station and whether or not sorting technology could be integrated into that to maybe help us do things like remove organics from garbage as it comes in a mixed waste stream so that we could maybe do, an AD system that could, again, either capture that gas and find another use for it, whether it was electricity or in a natural gas line or more of a composting feature. And so, we are thinking about when we create this new transfer station the next 5, 10, 30 years and how we can change kind of the way we accept garbage and maybe the way we sort it prior to getting it to the landfill.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. And I don't think Mike has joined us. Oh, right there. Do you mind?
So if you could introduce Mr. Penwell, that'd be great.
This is Mike Penwell. He's our capital projects manager here at Plain County and county operations.
Hi.
You want to add from there?
Sure. Yeah. This is the first time. I'm a late addition, so this is the first time I've seen this slide. So let me just catch up real quick here.
You're welcome for us doing that for you, by the way.
Hands across the departments.
Yeah. So in general, there are a number of strategies to make our buildings more energy efficient as we move forward. Adding insulation when we do a re-roof, for example. I think the heating, ventilating, and air conditioning equipment and the lighting when we do upgrades and retrofits are probably the area of the biggest gain that's possible. Anything that we can do to increase energy efficiency. And then when equipment comes to the end of its useful life, that's the opportunity to look at fuel switching. So do we switch from natural gas fired equipment to heat pump technology that's all electric? We don't want to do that prior to the equipment reaching the end of its useful life, but that's the time to do that analysis. In the meantime, all of our gas-fired equipment, we can do retro-commissioning, so it's operating as efficiently as possible and reducing our greenhouse gas consumption in that manner. We've added, for those of you that are on the facilities committee, we've added criteria for project prioritization that includes energy efficiency and sustainability and the aspects that would make a difference on our greenhouse gas footprint. And then things like, if we get the opportunity to build a new courthouse, for example, we will make that with as energy efficient an envelope as possible and analyze the equipment that goes into it. These days, all lighting is LED. We don't even use fluorescent anymore. It just makes so much more sense to do LEDs. Green materials, looking at the life cycle analysis, where they come from, using local materials. There's a balance there because there's also longevity. Unfortunately, some of the most durable materials are sort of toxic in their manufacture. PVC is a great example. And so analyzing things for the best investment with the environment in mind as well as economics. The triple bottom line does still include dollars, so we want to keep that in the mix. So these are the kinds of things that we can do in our capital projects, and just being sure to look through that lens of sustainability and what we can do to make the most progress as we move forward.
All right, thank you, Mike. Next slide, if you could. So just a quick summary. We do not have a greenhouse gas inventory for our county operations. We don't know how much emissions we're producing outside of fleet. But we have been working through the years to move forward with greenhouse gas reduction strategies as best management practices in various areas around the county. As Michael mentioned, as we're looking at our internal operations, emissions come from those three areas of fleet operations, facilities, and the procurement of goods and services. But obviously we have farther reach into the community with our programs such as waste management. The next slide. Our recommendations would be that we do move forward with the greenhouse gas inventory. It would be helpful to know where we're at and where we should focus our efforts. We do have some staff, Michael and myself, that have some knowledge in completing an inventory, but my recommendation would be that we use a consultant for reasons of expediency and outside objectivity. We have a great consulting firm here in town, good company, that has completed dozens of these for municipalities, and we might want to look there as a starter. I'd recommend that we incorporate the statewide goals and use their baseline. There's lots of ways to measure this and use different baseline years, but for getting on the same page as the state for consistency, I would recommend that we utilize what the state is doing. Would recommend that we engage or continue to engage with our community partners and stakeholders in our large leverage areas such as solid waste and transportation. We are working regionally with City of Eugene and City of Springfield, looking at our waste system, looking at potentially investing in a new facility. We work extensively with the MPO, the Metropolitan Policy Organization, on issues of transportation and transit and trying to reduce our regional emissions. And then finally, would recommend that we develop climate action goals and following evidence-based practices. We could spend a lot of time and money and looking at and studying every aspect of the county and developing a list of 100 different things that we should take. Some communities have done that in the past and are learning that that's not the way to go, that we should focus on what are the biggest things that we can do, what's the biggest bang for our buck. The City of Eugene is currently going through their Climate Action Plan 2.0 process. They learned a lot from their first go around, and I think we can learn from what their experience was. And I would like to see the board get on board with signing on to their Eugene Climate Collaborative. They'll probably be approaching you in the coming months to sign on and commit to the actions that we will take in partnership so that we're working together as a region. That completes our presentation. Open to discussion now for you or any questions you may have.
Okay, well, thank you so much. This was very informative, and I know that we have lots of questions about what we're doing, but we also have questions about your recommendations. Commissioner Burney.
That was great. When I asked when we were asking about work sessions, what Lane County's carbon footprint was, and Steve kind of looked at me and said, I don't know. This was the first step, and I had no idea the background and the perspective that you have, Dan and Mike, and in terms of this and your passion and interest. So I'm delighted with that. I wanted to just get into a few things, if I may. So when you were talking about the systems, I think you said purge that were 25 times more efficient.
Right, for the cool and heating systems.
Right, for HVAC?
Correct.
So I just want to point out, when people were asking when I was discussing the courthouse and how energy efficient it was, I was talking, well, just using current efficient technologies, we're looking at 80 to 90%, but you're demonstrating to me I might have been wrong. It might be even more efficient than that, given the current courthouse.
Yeah, Mike might be able to talk to that more than me, but I just know that one system that we're using right here, the figure we got is 25 times more.
Which, before you do, Mike, which I just wanted to point out, excuse me, but I wanted to point out that when you reach that level of efficiency, that then, for any given building, that then becomes the baseline, and the gap between what you're actually using and net zero becomes smaller, and then that's when you start looking at renewable technologies, right, and battery storage, and with multiple buildings, microgrids, so that we can actually get to those points as it relates to operations of buildings. But I'm sorry, I didn't mean to usurp whatever you were going to say. We've had lots of discussions already in the Facilities Committee.
Right. Yeah, I don't really have much to add, other than the current courthouse has an energy use index of almost 200, and a new building ought to be able to drop that down in the EUI of 50 to 60. So the lower, the better. And so, many times more efficient per square foot than the current building.
Thanks. And I really am. I'm saying this after a long, grueling morning meeting where we did not even have a chance to interact or respond. I knew that this request is preceding what, Dan, I think you're recommending, which is looking at some climate action planning and engaging with other groups that are already moving in that direction. I just wanted to share two things, and then maybe there'll be another round after everyone talks. But one is, I'm just pointing out, in the today's of all papers, today's Register Guard, I don't know if anyone noticed an article talking about how China's ban on scrap imports is starting to become a boon to the U.S. for U.S. recycling plants. So I encourage people to look at it, but I will read a bit of it now. The halt on China's imports of waste paper and plastic that's disrupted U.S. recycling programs has spurred American plants that process recycles. U.S. paper mills are expanding capacity to take advantage of a glut of cheap scrap. Facilities that previously exported plastic or metal to China are retooling so they can process it themselves, and it went on to list states that are moving in that direction. So I think that's pretty cool, and I just want to say I'm impressed. I'm behind this 1,000%. I think when we look at a climate action plan, ultimately we have to look at 100%, right? 100% net zero carbon emissions to get to that point. And I would like to point out that I believe the first community that has reached that is Lancaster, California. The deputy mayor of which is a good friend, and I've already called him, and to the degree we decide to move in this direction, he'd love to be a resource to our community. So thank you very much.
Couple of questions. I actually love the direction that you've already started. But in my previous professional career, I worked a lot on product stewardship, ensuring that the manufacturers that make the product know how to dispose of it at its end life. And in addition to that, I did a lot of research on plastics being converted into various types of either gasoline or oils, and trying to basically make our own R99, just even enough to carry our own fleet. And wanted to know from you what you felt in practicality sense, what we could do here in Lane County on those two fronts. In addition to that, I would be extremely excited to figure out how we can more robustly recycle or regenerate our food waste, also perhaps into products that could fuel our fleets or other energy efficient methods. Ultimately, you also mentioned in your brief for this meeting that the lane manual and lane code are relatively quiet in terms of environmental impacts. Part of my intent in ensuring that we bring this out to discuss more, and I know it's going to be an an ongoing discussion as things change. But my intent is to somehow codify our environmental responsibility in our manual and/or code at some point once we've gotten through to a level that we feel is good to do so. But yeah, very interested in what you think the county could do in the sense of product stewardship and perhaps our own plastics recycling or other kind of product recycling to generate our own energy.
So first, to product stewardship. That is one of our legislative priorities, is to support that now. I would like to see us get more behind that. There are entities that have tried a couple of bills recently, one around pharmaceuticals, another around hazardous waste, that failed to get through the legislature. Would like to get behind those, as well as a number of other products. You know, mattresses are a big issue at the landfill. They take up space. The springs get caught in the equipment. They're just a mess. So there are, California, there's a product stewardship around mattresses. But trying to get behind those, we do have ones for paint here and fluorescent lamps, but there's much more we could do on that effort. I would like to see us get behind, we're not a member right now of the Product Stewardship Council. We should probably do that and then get behind the local efforts that are underway around those efforts. Regarding the plastics piece, there's an entity here in Oregon that has been working at that for over 15 years. It's a very challenging one. There are so many different types of plastics, and to have a clean stream that to move from plastics to fuel is very challenging. It's kind of the holy grail that I keep hearing about projects all around the country that are trying this, and people have spent millions of dollars trying to get there. So I personally don't think that we should put our efforts there. There's a lot of research and development going on that I think we should monitor for sure, and if that ever comes to fruition, get behind. But I would like to see, you mentioned the food waste. Food waste is the largest part of our waste, and it is the most harmful in our waste from a greenhouse gas perspective. So that waste goes into the landfill, breaks down, turns into methane, and while we have a collection system out there, the estimate is it's only about 75% efficient. So the other 25% is going out in the atmosphere. And depending on how you measure that, methane is at least 21 times as harmful as carbon dioxide into the environment. Much higher depending on how you calculate that. So that's where we should be focusing our effort. I would love to see us develop a waste processing system here that's pulling out those organics, sending it to anaerobic digestion, producing energy, using the end product as compost. That's happening down in California. That technology is there and proven, and it takes investment. So that's where I'd like to see us go.
The only other thing I just want to let the rest of the commissioners know, I'm 100% behind your recommendations. I know that we could go further and further and further, but we need to start somewhere and then keep the conversation going throughout the year.
Okay, Pat?
And I'm going to thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to tag right along with what Commissioner Bug just said. We need to start someplace, and, you know, getting out of the gate fast. I'd like to say we should get out of the gate fast, but Michael, I'm looking at you, and I go back about maybe 7 years to our first conversation about what are we doing with the fleet. And at that point, you were beginning to use alternative fuels, and I like the way you put things into 3 buckets, which seem to make things more manageable. We have fleet, facilities, and procurement. And I'm guessing it's not 33, 33, 33 as far as...
Actually, it almost is.
Is it really?
It's very close, yeah.
Well, that's good to know. And you say that we're well along the way on fleet and facilities, and we have plans in place that we haven't necessarily talked about publicly a great deal, but they are in place at this point in time. And then in procurement, can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, I wish I could. It's a little more difficult. I don't have a lot of experience with the procurement part, and it's looking at the upstream and downstream greenhouse gas emissions of all our procured goods and services, and it's very complicated. I know we've talking with Good Company that they have a lot of experience capturing those current greenhouse gases in that area. So I look forward, if we go that direction, to seeing how they capture that. And then we can adjust what we're doing to reduce that. But it's very complicated. It's not as easy as burn a gallon of this fuel, you have this many pounds of CO2 equivalent emissions. It takes a lot more to get into. So I think that's probably the area that we have the most room for growth in.
So great opportunity in that area. That's
correct.
Then, Commissioner Book talked a little bit about past business experience that she had working with the companies that she bought products from or acquired products from. So a part of it may be to ask the companies that we work with to do something.
Yeah, and that's absolutely a big part of it.
Yeah.
We have a very decentralized procurement process in the county for the most part. So one of the things, I assume we're getting a new procurement supervisor, that would be a big part of their job, I think, is to give direction to the other divisions in their procurement processes of how to look at that area.
And, I was the procurement manager for Jerry's. I was the merchandise manager at Jerry's. And what I found in people who wanted to sell me product, they were willing to do a lot of things in order to sell me product. So, they usually are willing participants in whatever it is you may ask them. This may be a stretch for some of them, but it's certainly an area of opportunity. The other thing I wanted to touch on is that at Food for Lane County, when I was there, we distributed 7 million pounds of food annually. Well, the city of Eugene currently distributes 40 million pounds of food into the landfill annually. That's a lot of food. And in talking to and looking at their program, they have pilot programs in place right now. I presume that we are monitoring what is happening there. City of Eugene tends to be on the leading edge in many areas, and I think that it would be. I'm talking to someone now who's probably already doing it, monitoring the pilot programs. There's one in Bethel, just happens to be on the other side of the freeway from where I live. But people seem to be willing to participate in that and really anxious to see what the results are. Pilot programs can lead to universal programs. Can you talk a little bit about Eugene's pilot at this point?
Have that, Dan, about the food? Yeah, I'm not familiar with.
Food waste pilots, sorry?
Their food waste, yeah.
Yes. It's been a while since I've checked in on that one. Jeff might have more current information, but they did 2 pilots. Those were going well.
Mm-hmm.
Their intent is to try to roll that out across the community, but I'm not sure where they're at with that. Jeff?
So they're still accumulating data from the pilots, I would think, at this point in time.
Right.
So once that data is available for analysis, Dan, it seems right, both Dan and Michael, it seems right up your alley, both of you, to be hungry for that data. So,
No pun intended.
So the way that program works, just so people are aware who are not, the food waste goes into the compost bin, so it's not a separate collection. So there's issues of contamination, obviously, of the composter that receives that material. But the city's been working hard on the education around that, and so far I hear it's going pretty well.
And knowing that you have a master's degree in that, and Michael, you have a master's degree in, what is yours?
Energy and sustainability.
Energy and what a great combination that is. So, we're in pretty good hands as far as our leadership is concerned, and I'm excited to go down the path, particularly to identify some areas that we can have an immediate impact. Some things that we can do that potentially you're already doing. It may just be a matter of publicizing what it is that we're doing. The fleet management, for instance, the fuel management. So I'm, once again, I'm like the other commissioners who have spoken, I'm anxious to see how far we can take this and how quickly we can take it there. Thank you.
Thank you. And I want to thank the board for having this item come forward, because one of the things I wanted to have folks understand is, even though we don't have something called a climate action plan, we haven't been doing nothing. There's been a lot of effort by the county in the past, started and initiated, as was noted from the start, a piece of our strategic plan that directs this activity. And one of the things I'm concerned about is there's been a little bit of loss of history too. We've had a lot of turnover in our facilities management, and one of the things that hasn't been brought up is we spent a lot of years in my first term working with McKinstry on energy performance contracting, and the amount of energy saved in those contracts in our facilities was pretty amazing. As we divorced ourselves from eWeb's steam system and went into other systems, and everything we did under an energy performance contract just about. But the folks that managed all that aren't here anymore, and it's difficult for you guys to speak to that because you don't have that history. But it's always been part of our values to preserve the environment. Whether you have arguments about science of our environment or not, we've always had that as a value. So I just wanted to bring that out, and you just hear about everything Michael's been doing with the fleet to try and prevent that, things we've been doing more recently in facilities, everything we're doing in waste management. We're doing our best to reduce our carbon footprint and reduce our footprint on the environment in general. So I was really pleased to have this come before the board today. I am a little concerned, we talk about purchasing and upstream, downstream impacts. I haven't heard any of that relative to EVs. And I really have great concern that EVs are not the best thing for carbon footprint. The cradle to grave on the battery technology is got a huge footprint. And what you save in actual CO2 emissions from the tailpipe is lost in CO2 emissions in refining the materials that go into the batteries and then having to deal with disposal of those batteries on the tail end. And that's a concern of mine, and I haven't seen that comparison cradle to grave on including, entire lifespan calculations between the two.
I have not researched it lately, but I actually did my thesis and my master's degree program on EV adoption, and that is one of the points that was in there, and I'll look into that more. I know, and also the general figures we get for greenhouse gas emissions for EVs is actually better here because of the fuel, the electricity mix that we have is mostly hydro, so that we have a little cleaner mix than the general look at that. But I'll look more into that and bring that back.
Yeah, and in addition to that cradle to grave is as we try and go to 100% EV in our small vehicle fleet and everyone else does, the competition for those battery materials worldwide, as China's doing the same thing, lithium, cadmium, even lead and nickel, the prices are going to skyrocket. So I'm not so sure I believe in this idea that EVs are going to become cheaper in the future. I have a feeling the batteries are going to become extremely expensive as everybody tries to jump into that technology. Just scarcity of materials. I don't think we can mine enough lithium to supply the world's needs in the future of how much we're using lithium-ion batteries right now. Not to mention it has been a small problem out at the landfill lately. So just, something I'd like to make sure is if we're going to talk upstream, downstream, we talk upstream, downstream in everything and understand the complete life cycle carbon footprint as we look at that. But I'm happy we're talking about this. I look forward to the further discussion. Sometime I wouldn't mind having side conversations about, percent greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, percent of those greenhouse gases that's actually CO2 versus water vapor, and what actually controls our climate. That's a whole side issue. I'm not going to have those discussions right now with you guys, but as engineering folks that understand, absorption spectrographs and a few other things, I think I can convince you that maybe we're chasing our tail a little bit, going after some of these things. But saving energy saves money, and I'm all for saving the taxpayers' money.
Thank you. I just wanted to list off a couple of comments I had about items that have been raised throughout this discussion. Then we'll have another round because we think this is pretty important and everybody should be heard on the board. The first thing I wanted to mention was that in terms of public works and your component agencies, I think the planning part of public works, the LMD, not to be confused with the Waste Management Division and the fleet effort, but planning is really important because as we use our land efficiently, we are more likely to consume less energy, and we're less likely to have then the green effects of greenhouse gas. So I think planning is a really big component into the future. Secondly, I have not heard a lot about this, and I think this is an important part of our next discussion, but I think there's a strong citizen involvement potential here for involving people that have been studying this, that have been wanting the county to do more. Maybe they haven't been as informed about what the county is doing, but they want the county to do more. And I think that a component of what we do has to involve a citizen component. I'm not sure what that is. I'd like to hear some different ideas of how to do that. Another thing, which is really a basic thing, and that is we should have a climate action plan. We should make a goal that the disparate activities within the county government or within the county, separate from the county government, really ought to be brought together in terms of a climate action plan. One of the things I think is going to be essential to produce a climate action plan is to have an inventory. And I think everybody kind of realizes that you can't really move forward until you understand where you are. And so there are lots of people out there, professionals out there that can help us do that. But it seems to me that an obvious thing is we need an inventory. One hasn't been done. There hasn't been sufficient direction from the Board of Commissioners or the county administrator or the department director. We just all need to move, I think, in the direction of getting an inventory. This product, would you call it Product Sustainability Council?
Product Stewardship.
Product Stewardship Council. I think that's a really great idea. We should jump on that. We are definitely the kind of government that could benefit from that and the learning and involvement. And then I'll just mention a couple other things and then I'll ask a question. Mr. Hurley, you mentioned that one of the things that motivated you was that this climate discussion is threatening our health, threatening the health of people in our community. And I wanted to ask whether you have gotten into the weeds yet on whether the county's health authority to have this plan be not just Lane County government, not just Lane County, the unincorporated parts of Lane County, but all of Lane County would be under this Lane County climate action plan, so that we are we're not just doing this in a piecemeal fashion. This is something integrated, and it builds on whatever the cities have done, whatever the private sector has done outside of government, whatever ODOT and other agencies that have looked into greenhouse gas in their transportation arena, whether we can use the authority that we have under the authority for a health authority that we have to actually implement this plan, and once we get it done, and make it so that it is something that people follow throughout the county.
Chair, I have not looked into that. I think it would depend on what we're proposing.
Okay.
So I think it's something we should bring into the conversation as we start the work to do.
Well, obviously, if we reduce the amount of carbon and some kinds of pollution as a result of this overall plan, whether it's private sector, nonprofit, local governments, state government, if we move towards that, and part of the reason we're doing that is because we want to reduce the health impacts of all this pollution on people. It seems to me that health authority jurisdiction is a powerful tool to get it moving. And last but not least, this is something that's always bugged me. We go to the dump and you see people, I mean, I'm usually stopping to take my newspapers and ask to bring people, is there anything I've got here that I can recycle or reuse? And they're sending me with some of my lumber over to the lumber pile. And finally, I'm getting ready to go the final step and see that D7 CAT, and thank you so much for the 50% reduction in the operational costs. That's really great to learn about. I see that CAT going back and forth, and then somebody's dumping a whole bunch of mattresses, or they're piling them up or something. Can we get a full recovery when people buy something like that? Like with our bottle bill, you know, you got to pay the deposit at the point. What about the mattress? Why don't we deal with something specific?
So that is the product stewardship model. And it can be rolled out to mattresses as well, so that people pay a fee on top of their mattress when they buy it. That money goes to setting up a facility that can then deconstruct those mattresses. And I would like to say that we have been recycling mattresses in partnership. St. Vincent de Paul does that work. They've been doing that for probably 15 years for us. But mattresses are getting more and more challenging as they change the composition of them. They're becoming harder and harder to recycle.
And finally, I'll finish my comments by just saying the idea that we codify what it is we're doing, that we make it a policy that our departments carry out, really important. And thanks, Commissioner Buck, for bringing up the idea of codifying it. Okay, we can have another round, Commissioner Bernie.
Can I just make one comment to that
Sure.
point, that I just want to clarify that we have an open board assignment to create a climate action plan. So that has already been assigned by the board. And as you continue your conversation and once you start to wrap up, I think what we'd like from you today is to review those recommendations and give us at least head nods that you'd like to incorporate those as some next steps into building that climate action plan. Sorry to jump in, but I just want to put that on there as you're thinking about wrapping up.
Okay. Joe?
I've been jumped in by even better than you, Steve. Just kidding. While I'm talking, can you put those recommendations back on the, because I want to make sure I'm speaking to that. Because it sounds to me, correct me if I'm wrong, that you've been toiling, hoping for the Board of Commissioners to come to this moment, yeah? Where we're saying, you know, go do what you studied, what your passion is, and let's create a climate action plan both for county government operations as well as maybe even the county as a whole. And so I want to re-emphasize, go forth and give us your best shot, because I can't wait to see what your ideas and your pent-up thoughts are, because you've been right there where the rubber hits the road. That's number one. Number two, while I appreciate history and things, McKinstry is one of hundreds of large energy service, what are they called? EPSs? Anyway. Energy performance contractors, EPCs. And I've worked with a bunch of them. And it's true. You can, even in Oregon where energy rates are low, sometimes there are things you can do where if your payback is over a life cycle of the item, right, you're going to get that payback. When I was developing in California, they were looking for paybacks of 3 to 5 years. Energy prices were way higher, but still that narrow of a payback limited what you can do. So within that, if every municipality is looking, what was that? You said you're looking for a middleman for a $7,500?
How because we don't have a tax liability.
We have no tax appetite.
But there's some programs where someone will buy it for us and they hold on to part of it and give it us a piece.
I know how it works.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
No, but what's that for?
That's for the electric vehicles, to take full advantage of the $7,500 federal tax credit.
Thank you, sir. If all the municipalities that were interested in this in the state of Oregon came together, I could connect you to the right people, literally now, that are investment funds that are investing in sizable clean energy opportunities, that have tax appetite, that will be part of the LLC, that will extract the tax benefits so that the final cost is very low for the municipality. So they do exist, and we ought to take advantage of that within whatever plan you have. Has anyone, have we yet undertaken any kind of a feasibility of solar on the landfill over the membrane?
We have over the years, we've looked at that. Unfortunately, we did a final closure on 22 acres on the south side of the landfill, and then solar landfills came about in the next, year or two after that. So to go back and do a closure over that was going to be challenging.
Gotcha.
But we have spoken with a firm. They've looked at one area of the landfill, but we haven't been able to make anything happen yet.
Okay. Just a couple of other things, Mr. Chair. One, I really agree with you. There's a tremendous, once we get this back from you, there's so much talent in our community. So many people that have had professions and careers tackling these subjects. I know a lot of the people, not a lot, but a few of the people this morning have come here from what I would call bigger, dirtier cities. And this seems to be the place where purity is possible. So I think that we have a lot of people whose expertise, once we have a plan, we can then figure out a structure of input, as you were saying, Mr. Chair. And finally, Jeff, you were talking about education, and I really see that as huge. There are curricula out there. There are interactive models. For example, you could put a solar panel with a motor on a school, and every kid at the school with laptops can change the angle to the sun and see how energy is being produced and do calculations. I mean, a teacher can take that anywhere they want to. So I think that's huge, and I hope that that's a more and more significant part of whatever the climate action plan we look at is. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I think this has been a very good discussion, and did you get the answers to your question, or would you like to specifically go down the line and see how we are on this?
I sense support from the board to move forward with these, and so so you know that we have that assignment out there to develop the climate action plan, and we have the beginning stages to formulate that plan, and we will come back to the board with regular updates because we know this is a high priority for you. So.
Very good. One thing I'll just mention as a closing comment is that in May of 2013, the Mauna Loa Scripps measurement was, for the first time, hit 400 parts per million of CO2. And I pointed that out around that same time, that was a big milestone in the amount of carbon, at least measured by Scripps Oceanographic Institution. Just wanted you to know, I just checked. The most recent data they report was from May 18, a few days ago, and it was 415.02 ppm at that measurement. And there's an article in the Rolling Stone about why 415 is such a important number. So we're not going to be waiting around for this. We got to keep working on it. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, we are getting closer to going back to the top of our agenda again. So as we go back to item 1, our adjustments to the agenda, I'm counting that we still have to do our commissioner's remonstrance. I'm assuming we don't have any emergency business.
No.
Yeah. I figured by now that would have been called to our attention.
Quite an emergency.
Okay, we do have county administration announcements, item 6C. We have maybe county council announcements, item 6A,
Nothing from county council.
or 8A. We have commissioner announcements, Commissioner, say that again.
Nothing on A for today.
Nothing on A, very good. Nothing, and then we have 9A, 9B, we have 10, 11, we've done 12, we've not done 13, we've not done 14, which is the same as 10, and we have not done 15, which is the same as 11. So, let's go back up to the top. Let's do our commissioner's response to public comments and/or other issues and remonstrance. Do any commissioners wish to make any remonstrance? Yeah.
I think we ought to probably identify an evening meeting for the group, and we probably ought to structure an agenda such that we can then talk with them. Because anything we would have to say now, everybody's gone. So I think that that's something that ought to occur, and I would propose that, where literally the agenda for the meeting is public comment, remonstrances, and just on the issue of this particular initiative, because it seems to be a hot button, and folks came here and we couldn't even talk with them, just because of the nature of the agenda.
Well, it sounds like you're proposing an agenda item then.
Yeah, I'm proposing at some point we look at an evening meeting specifically on that item for public communication.
Okay.
Really, that's all.
And in agenda team requests, I will have a specific request on that. So it was pretty loud and clear, quite frankly. And it did, thank you, Mr. Chair, it did interfere with the rest of the business, which we had fairly well scheduled, but we did not want to push people out the door and not let them speak. So I'll have a request later on in the meeting. Just remonstrances. Wanted to mention Mr. McAllister, who was here. Chris McAllister is a member of the Poverty and Homelessness Board. He was a member of the board that the small board that came forward with the policy recommendations from the TAC committee. And Chris is also on the Shelter and Supportive Housing Development Subcommittee. And if he were still here, I'd talk a little bit more about that. But Mr. McAllister has been a really integral part of helping us to determine things that people who've never been homeless may not know, may not be able to discern very easily. So I wanted to thank him publicly for that. And then, Mr. Chair, I'll have a couple of things when we get to items from Commission.
Okay. Are there other commissioner remonstrances or responses to public comment? Jay.
Thank you. First, I'd like to start out by apologizing to both the public, the staff, and some of the outside of Lane County presenters this morning for this morning's meeting. We advertise pretty clearly what our agenda is going to be, including time certains, so that people can turn on the television when something of interest comes on that they want to watch. Also, so that folks from outside of Lane County that are scheduled to come and present to us know when they have to block off their schedule. We also clearly advertise what our time period for public comment is, and that we may cut that off. And the chair has the ability to do that. The chair also has the ability, if he knows there's a large group coming in, maybe to encourage them to come in over several meetings or do something. But this morning's meeting, I think, was just poor practice. And I think we need to think hard about how we deal with that in the future. I appreciate that the chair did limit folks to 2 minutes instead of 3, but the fact that somebody's standing up and yelling at us in the audience that he drove an hour when I just watched people that drove over from Florence, which is further than Deadwood and Triangle Lake, get up and leave because they couldn't wait. That just, and knowing that that person's addressed us multiple times in the past. And the folks that were here from Florence have only addressed us once. It just, something has to be better managed about that process. And understanding that we have, a lot of agencies take public comment and they basically say if we get more than so many people, we'll start dividing the time available by the number of people signed up. Of course, we had 30-some people sign up today and actually took 40 out of the 47 that signed up because 7 people left. But I think we need to do a better job, and I just want to apologize to the public that had to wait through that, the public that had to leave. I want to apologize to the staff at the City of Eugene, the citizen volunteers from the Santa Clara River Road area that had to sit and wait through that. We have to manage our meetings better. We've just done a terrible job since the first of the year in managing our meetings. Something's got to change.
Okay, any other remonstrance? Okay. I'll just say that people that came to a public comment, They came for lots of different reasons, and we always have the choice of not having public comment or cutting their public comment. I think that in planning a 3-hour meeting, we had a 3-hour and 30-minute meeting. We had 40-something people that testified. Clearly, some could not be here. I think we've heard some comment before on topics like Association of ONC Counties, putting things out to the ballot, Collard Lake Road, a lot of the issues. So it's not as if we have not heard public comment. We can always cut off public comment. And believe me, I have been here at times when the board has just gotten tired of hearing the same public comment. And so commissioners get upset and they want to cut off public comment. I don't think that's a good idea. I think it's better to give people an opportunity. And I think people saw that we were being fair at how we did it. But obviously, if the board wants to change the method, the board can. I don't think we should. In terms of some of the specifics raised in public comment, I think that the people were commenting on Collard Lake Road. I thought we handled that quite well in the afternoon. So their short-term problems should be addressed. I thought that was good. In terms of the comment that we should do more about the Wayne Morse Free Speech Plaza, and I believe that was a request from the agenda team. And what is the status of that? Do you remember? The Wayne Morse Plaza
what was the request?
opening the Wayne Morse Plaza to First Amendment activity. That was one of the public comments raised
Yes,
today.
I heard the public comment. I don't know what.
Didn't the board at a previous meeting say that we had 3 headlines to bring back the issue of the closure of the Wayne Morse Free Speech Plaza?
That maybe it's just not ringing a bell for me, sorry.
Yeah, we did.
We did, and then we got 3.5 hours of video homework, which I did, regarding the previous discussions on that, and then I think it should be coming on an agenda.
Okay, so Mr. Mulcahy, if you could check on that.
Yes.
Maybe when the agenda team meets, we could get that date, so.
Yeah, I will say, I did check on the code. There's a Lane County code reference to restrictions for the free speech plaza. Those are available on our website that specify those operations. I think the issue that you heard today was related to, the requirement is that we have, if you're going to sell goods, you have to have a permit. And there's also a restriction on canopies. So because of the safety issues, that when it gets windy, and if the canopies are not tied down and fixed like they are for the Saturday market in the park blocks, they're a public safety related issue. So that's my understanding. That's what the issue is.
My point was that public comment was on the topic of the Wayne Morse Free Speech Plaza, and I think that we have that coming back to the board, and I think you are going to inform us.
Yeah,
I'll
check on when that.
Another thing that came up in the public comment was the county's membership in the Association of ONC Counties. That'll be discussed during our budget adoption process, June 11 and June 18, June 11 or June 18. Regarding the big topic of people coming in wanting to have a work session or wanting us to put on the ballot, I'm personally in favor of doing a work session on that topic. That's about it in terms of the remonstrance. More remonstrance.
Yeah, but Heather, have you done it yet? Because I have already.
I'll just go quickly. On the public comment issue that we're talking about, this has always been an issue since, I came into this seat, is public comment's always been at 9 a.m., but you never know how many people are going to come. And so you are still trying to structure an agenda that has, a lot of needed work to be done. It's inherently a problem because of the only half an hour at the beginning of a meeting. And since our agendas are set, several weeks in advance, and if you hear, okay, there's going to be a huge group tomorrow, well, we had already set our agenda. And today it was pretty structured because we had no idea, so many people were going to arrive. We definitely need to find a time for a regularly scheduled time, either at lunch or an evening, where we know that that's what we'll dedicate to the public. We practiced a couple of times. I would argue some were not as well advertised in advance as we could have. And if it's not a regular scheduled thing every month where people know, we're going to lose people that might be interested in actually speaking because they can't keep up on what days we are and what days we aren't doing it. So when we do get to agenda items, I would like us to think about that too.
Okay.
Well, Commissioner Buck, so much for me being more articulate than you. That's exactly what I was trying to say. I'm going to take a different tack than Commissioner Bozovich. I don't think we could have predicted the amount of people here today. And I actually there were awkward moments. It was awkward for me not to be able to respond to them, but I actually want to compliment the chair on making time for everyone, and yet I also want to agree with Commissioner Bozovich that for those whose times got poorly managed because of us and what hit us, I felt bad for that too. That's all I wanted to say. I thought we did an okay job for ending half an hour late this morning.
Okay, so let's move on then to our next item, which is item 6C. Yeah, 6C. And this is our county administration announcements.
I'll just do a quick update on elections. Of course, today is election day. Voter turnout as of yesterday was 19.8%, or 51,655 ballots received through yesterday. So we're in line with the May 2017 returns. In 2017, we received 50,265 through Monday returns, and the overall turnout in 2017 was 29.18. Ballots can be deposited at any of our 20 official drop site locations in Lane County, or any Oregon official drop box no later than 8 p.m. Today you have to have it in the box by 8 o'clock or it'll be locked. And postmarks do not count if you put it, it's too late to put it in the mail, obviously. Results will be posted at 8 p.m., 10 p.m., and then when our staff leaves for the night, probably around midnight, you can go to lanecounty.org/elections for all election information. And then post-election work will continue after Election Day, so the work for the elections team doesn't end at midnight tonight. They continue to work on write-in ballot processing for the 17 no candidate filed positions, voters resolving unsigned ballot envelope or signatures that did not match, and preparing the election abstracts. The full 20 days will be utilized to complete the post-election work in order to meet the statutory certification deadline of June 10th, 2019. That's it, Mr. Chair, unless you have questions.
Okay, any questions for the administrator on his announcements?
Fingers crossed.
Okay, so press on to item 9A, announcements from commissioners. Commissioner Farr.
Thank you. Just a couple of things. John Rees, city manager, over the weekend had a presentation in Newport to one of the churches over there to talk about the work that the city of Eugene's been doing on homelessness. And it's substantial. You know, the city of Eugene has been working since before I arrived on the scene in the mid-1990s on lots and lots of homelessness issues, including Opportunity Village, including rest stops, including other initiatives, the camping ordinance, which passed in 1997. There was a protest at the Newport church. I didn't hear about this from Mr. Rees. I heard about it from a different source, where people accused him of being non-responsive to homelessness issues, accused him of charting only the most expensive, least effective course, in addressing homelessness. It was an absolute disservice to Mr. Rees. Mr. Rees has been one of the great champions of using public resources to chart the best course to address homelessness. As the member of SLEEPS that were there, they put out a very abrasive letter regarding Mr. Rees, very uncomplimentary. In fact, it was derogatory. And I'll send you all a copy of the letter. You may have all seen it. It came to everybody yesterday morning from SLEEPS. It was absolutely disgusting what was written in that letter. And it said, I really wish that I could have been there, because I would have stepped in between Mr. Rees and the occurrences that were happening there, just to demonstrate that he is not the person that they portrayed to that congregation in Newport. It was disgusting. So I will state that out loud. Then the second thing I'm going to mention is on our consent calendar today, something really good happened. I didn't pull it from the consent calendar, but the Fair Board has decided to add a member to the Fair Board. So now there are 6 members on the Fair Board. There have been 5. I believe they can have up to 13 members by their governance charter. So they've added a 6th member, and they added 2 new appointees today. One of them was a reappointment of Sid Voorhees. We all know Sid, been on the committee for many, many years. And Sid is very effective and lives and breathes it. The second person that was appointed was Rich Cunningham, who was a former EWEB member. He's currently a member of the Bethel School Board and has been a public servant in Bethel for many, many years. Bethel has historically had a dearth of appointees to committees, whether they be city committees, county committees, whatever it may be. So for me, it's great to see somebody from Bethel, particularly somebody who's had a devotion to community service for as long as Mr. Cunningham has, to be appointed to the Fair Board. A part of the order that we that we passed in consent calendar today stated that the commissioner liaison to the Fair Board, who is a non-voting member, would become a voting member for quorum concerns, or in the event of a tie, in the event of a tie in the vote, neither of which are likely, by the way. But they did add that to their charter. Since they have 6 members, thought, well, what if we're historically coming up with a 3-3 tie? Once again, they tend to work as a body and work out the differences before they go to a vote. So I'd like to thank the board for passing that for the Fair Board. The Fair Board is a very effective board who does a superb job of guiding our efforts in the Lane County Fair annually, one of the best things that happens in this county every single year. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. So I just had, I guess I'll say, an obvious announcement, and that was that the election results for tonight's election will be on the Lane County website. So I think Mr. Mokarski talked a little bit about that, but that'll be something you can tune into shortly after 8 p.m. Okay, we are now ready to look at the combined item of 9B, which is agenda team requests and work session requests. And I already talked about the Wayne Morse Free Speech Plaza, so that'll be coming back to the board at some point, and you'll notify us of that. The other item was are we doing a board retreat, and do we have a date for that?
We had a date, but not all commissioners could make it. It was in July, and so we're actively working to reschedule. I'm not sure that there's been a date that's been.
Okay, I'll just remind everybody just to notify Ms. Jones via email or drop by her office to let her know your availability for a board retreat, and she will give you some options, I guess. And then I heard during the public comment today kind of 2 things, and one was request for evening public comment and also a work session on this referral on the aerial herbicide thing. And I was wondering, I'll just pose this as an option, that we have the public comment on June 11th in the evening, and that way we're somewhat responding to requests that we have public comment in the evening. And I'll specifically throw out June 11th because that's our next board meeting. Yeah, go ahead.
That is an LCOG meeting date, so
No good.
that won't work for me. But what I'd rather us talk about is, and staff help us with is a date where we don't have, conflicting committee meetings
I have a
on a
suggestion.
regular day.
I'll wait for my turn, though.
Yeah.
That's all I was going to add.
So are you saying you would do it June 12th, but not June 11th?
No, what I'm saying is, I have a Lane Act meeting on June 12th. So, these evening meetings, we need to have staff kind of help us figure out which meetings we're already going to then. And I would suggest we propose an evening date that's the same every month, that doesn't conflict with other board committee assignments or board work. And then get back to us and let us know what that could be, so we can potentially implement that.
Okay, so we'll ask staff to make a suggestion. How does that sound?
That may be taken care of when I make my request.
Yeah, okay.
Well, I'll wait, I won't say anything.
Yeah, why don't you make your request, or comment on her request?
When I was first on the Eugene City Council in '95, the council would have public comment once a month. It was on the second Tuesday of the month, and it was at 7:30, once a month. And shortly after that, I became president of the council, and at that point, I said, why don't we do it every Monday meeting? So the Eugene City Council at that point began what is its current practice of every Monday that they have a council meeting, they have a public, an open mic, basically a public comment period. We do that, but because of the time of the day, we don't have as robust a turnout as the Eugene City Council does. The Eugene City Council, because it has been regularly scheduled for so long, people are accustomed to that time, and they know that that's a good time to do it. So what I would recommend, what I'd like to suggest, and I'm going to be very specific about this, I'd like to suggest that we establish the second Tuesday of every month from 5 till 6:30 as a public comment period for the Board of County Commissioners. Gets it out of the way before dinner break, so people can come directly from work or in the early evening, and we wouldn't have to have special dinner provisions the way the Eugene City Council does, and it would give us a chance to stay here after the board meeting, continue the day until 6:30 on that one day of the month. I'd originally thought to suggest the second and fourth Tuesdays, but my initial request is for the second Tuesday. We're already in a board meeting on the weeks that we're down and we don't have a board meeting, then we would simply not have the second Tuesday public comment period. But that way, at first, I guarantee it would be slow. But I also guarantee that it would pick up in momentum and that people would become accustomed to it and potentially relieve the pressure that we felt this morning, that people had to be here and they traveled a long ways, and some people, as they said, had taken the day off work. So it would give them an opportunity to have a separate time. Not dispense with what we do on regular board meetings, but to add this. That's my recommendation.
So that, just for clarification, that's the second Tuesday at what time?
5 o'clock till 6:30.
5 o'clock.
I have LCOG meeting second Tuesday every month in the evening, so I would not be able to attend if that were the day that we chose to do it.
Does it start at,
Starts at 5:30.
Oh, it does, okay, then I'm the third Tuesday then, or first Tuesday, just a designated Tuesday.
Well, the third Tuesday then would be June 18.
For this coming, if that were the initial one, yeah.
Well, I'm just talking about if you wanted to start it right away. Okay.
Yeah, third Tuesdays look okay for me.
Me too.
Lane Planning Commission meets that evening, but unless they're doing a work session on a work plan, it's rare that I attend.
Okay.
And I'd suggest we do it in Harris Hall, but before we make that as the absolute determination, just, check what the ongoing availability of Harris Hall is on the whichever.
I think it's available, isn't it, Mr. Milkowiecki? Harris Hall, 5 to 6 p.m. on
Yeah,
the third
Tuesdays are fine.
Tuesday?
Mondays and Wednesdays are the days that the city council has it.
Yeah, okay. Well, why don't we take that as 3 head nods, unless there's further comment. Let's take that as that the board wants to hold a public comment on May 18.
June 18.
Yeah, June 18, and every third Tuesday thereafter, unless we have, do you want it 5 o'clock, or, because the proposal was 5 to 6?
5 is because it's directly at the end of the regular workday.
Yep.
So any staff that stays doesn't have a hiatus in between the end of the workday and the.
Okay, so we'll try to do the public comment then at 5 o'clock on the third Tuesday.
But
Okay.
I have that as an assignment, Mr. Chair, and then what we can do is, Diana Jones can check schedules to make sure that the second Tuesday of the month, 5 to 6:30.
Third Tuesday.
said
Third
Friday.
Tuesday, yeah, that's okay.
We're all getting a little rummy.
So June 18 would be our first one. Let's see, July would be July 16 is the third Tuesday in July. That is also a full board day. Third Tuesday in August is,
18th is the third Tuesday in June. Oh, I'm sorry.
yeah, August 20, which is also a board meeting. So at least for the first three, we're hitting the day that we're also having a board meeting.
Get to be problematic in November, but we can work around.
Yeah, well, November, January, 4th of July, those are all dates that will be factors. Okay, the other question I had under this item was, there was an issue raised today saying, commissioners, don't worry, you can put things on the ballot, you can make decisions, and you're not personally liable for the decision. I wonder if we could get an update from our risk manager on what are the financial liabilities of commissioners?
You want that from county.
Yeah, probably county, I'm not sure our risk manager could answer
Well,
the question, but.
she
probably
works with county council,
Yeah,
yeah.
county council.
Because I understand that there is insurance that other directors and officers of different nonprofits and other people have, and whether or not we have that kind of coverage or not, that would be useful information. There were several commenters that presented information about it. They didn't leave any written comments, but they presented comments, and we were quoting from something saying, oh, it's not a big deal, don't worry about it. That might contradict some things commissioners have been told about other statutes. So I would like to get that as an assignment. Are there 3 commissioners that would agree to that?
I think it'd be good if maybe county council can supply you with what they've already told us
Yeah.
about this particular
Yeah.
issue, which
Yeah.
was we would be liable if we knowingly put something on the ballot that we knew violated state law,
Yeah. So,
because we would be acting outside of our
well,
authority.
yeah,
as
but
commissioners.
this is a broader request. This is about all financial liability. So this is a little broader than that. But I do agree that that information would be also helpful. So I saw that there were 3 commissioners that wanted to do that. Okay, is that incorrect?
I didn't see 3 head nods.
Okay, I thought 3 people said yes.
I know.
Okay.
Okay.
I just,
Okay, so are there any other items that people want to raise during this period of the meeting? Okay. All right. And what about the other half of my request about the June 18, or June, my proposal was June 11, modified to be June 18, to have a work session on the putting the measure out for a vote, or measures.
Okay. You want a work session?
Well, I'm asking the board, because I don't want to say that's something the board's agreed to if we haven't agreed. What we did agree to was, we're going to try to do public comment. And what I'm now raising is, I raised it as kind of a combination, but now, if the public comment is going to go from 5 o'clock onward, do we want to put on our agenda at that meeting or a subsequent meeting the issue that was raised by the public comment on the substance of doing a referral or an ordinance or something?
My issue with that is I imagine if that was even a subject on that day, it would be a lot of conversation, and we're already going straight to public comment from 5 o'clock. There's no eating involved in Harris Hall.
Right?
And our day starts pretty early. on Tuesdays, especially if you're on the agenda team.
Yep.
And, you know, if we're trying to establish a public comment period where it's dedicated to the public, I would really like to start it that way.
Okay. And not have,
See how it
yep,
goes.
And that was my intent, that it be solely for
Yeah.
public comment.
yep.
Yeah, I'd also like to suggest that we get either an exec session or somewhere else legal advice from our counsel around referral of ballot measures that may conflict with state laws before we hold an open work session and give people hope that we're going to do something that we're prohibited by law from doing. You know, so
I definitely
if
favor
we don't
that.
have the exec session first, I think it's a waste of.
Why don't we just break it down and have the executive session first? That seems like something, and we'll do that in the regular course of our work. Does that seem reasonable? Yeah.
I'm fine with that. Just to give me a frame of reference, were something to be referred to ballot, Mr. Mokrahajski, when would it need to be referred by, so I understand the window of time?
Mid-August.
So we have plenty of time.
Oh, yeah. For November, that is, for November
November,
19.
yeah.
For November 19, and then later for, because I heard them asking for 2020
Usually
ballot.
March 1,
March 1?
May.
For May,
Okay.
right,
Early
another
March.
So there's
August.
plenty of time. Okay, although I would encourage us to have the session that the Commissioner Bozovich and Sorensen agreed they would like to have as soon as possible.
Okay, so that'll be another assignment then for our legal counsel. Okay, are there any other items under 9B that commissioners want to raise? Okay, so at this time, we are going to review our assignments, and then we're going to have no other business, but we're going to recess into executive session.
Yeah,
We're
you want me
ready
just
to call you up as item 13, Mr. Mokrahajski.
Yeah, for review of assignments. So I have these three, the request to look at scheduling a public comment, a monthly public comment session of the board on the third Tuesday of each month from roughly 5 to 6:30 PM, beginning on June 18th. The request that county council provide an overview to commissioners regarding their financial liability. Personal financial liability is what I took from that.
For actions undertaken as commissioners.
Right. And then the third was an exec session on referrals, an overview on ballot, voter referrals on the ballot by county council in an exec session. Then I also just want to provide for the board that we do, the Free Speech Plaza discussion has not been scheduled. As I understand, county council provided the video and was wanting the commissioners to watch that video before that would be scheduled. So we'll touch base when Mr. Dingle is back in town. And then the dates we're looking at, because July was not available for all commissioners, and the first 2 weeks of August were down. August 28th, September 11th, or September 25th are the three
Could you
dates.
repeat those dates for you?
August 28th.
Okay.
This is for a board retreat.
Yep.
August 28th, September 11th, or September 25th.
Okay, so I'll just ask the commissioners to notify Ms.
Ms.
Jones.
Williams, Judy Williams was scheduling that.
Oh, Judy Williams, okay. So notify Ms. Williams,
Judy or Diana can help with
Yeah.
that, yeah.
because that way we can announce that and get planning on it. Thank you so much. Are there other, is there another review?
That's it for me. That's all
Okay.
I caught.
Anything that commissioners want to bring to the attention of Mr. Mokrahajski in the review? Okay, so let's now move to item 14. We've completed all other business, except for other business, which will reserve our right to come back. So at this time, under executive session, item 14, the Board of Commissioners will meet in executive.
Chair.
Yeah,
Pardon my interruption.
Yeah.
I would like to declare I will declare a potential conflict of interest. My son is a member of the ASME union with a determination or with a advice from the Oregon Ethics Commission, I believe that while there is a potential conflict of interest, there is not a statutory one, so I will participate in this discussion in the executive session.
Thank you. So the Board of Commissioners will meet in executive session to conduct deliberations with persons designated by the governing body to carry on labor negotiations and to consult with counsel concerning the legal rights and duties of a public body with regard to current litigation or litigation likely to be filed. This executive session is held pursuant to RS 192.6602D and H, which allows the Board of Commissioners to meet in executive session for the purposes listed. Representatives of the news media and designated staff shall be allowed to attend the executive session. All other members of the audience are asked to leave the room. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on any of the deliberations during the executive session, except to state the general subject of the session as previously announced. No decision may be made in executive session. We reserve the right to come back out of executive session into public session should the need arise. At this time, we are reserving our right to come back into open session, and we are in recess for 5 minutes to transition up to the Board of Commissioners conference room, and then we'll commence our executive session.